I think looking at things from a systems perspective and appreciating their complexity is really important, because so many of the issues that we face as a world today are not don't fall into the single disciplines that we usually think about. And it's important to have people who are specialists in their field and who really dig deep into one thing, but that one thing doesn't need to fall within a single discipline. And so I think in the case of infectious disease, which is what I'm interested in studying, not only is it relevant to virologists, but also to policymakers, and environmental science plays a huge role in thinking about where diseases are spread and where the vectors are. And so these seemingly single issues have fingers in all different fields that are all important to study and to understand in an integrated way, not just on their own. So I think that the systems thinking approach that Ross uses has really prepared me in a lot of ways to think about these issues as multifaceted and appreciate their complexity.
The Ross School certainly had, its whole curriculum is modeled on interdisciplinary study. Basically they're trying to pull in, you're studying the same subject across the board in all the classes. So if you're studying, Galileo, you're looking at all of that in physics, you're looking at that in a history context, you're looking at the literature that's going on in that time. So in that way, you're training your brain how to think in an interdisciplinary way. And I think that applies directly to what I'm trying to do now in biology. Obviously the pure content of how literature connects to all these things isn't super useful now, but it's the thought process, it's the thinking of it that way, and that going through your studies in this kind of thought process is what's become super useful for me. Because I can see the connection. I think, a lot of people take these courses and they're taking their computer science course, they're taking their chemistry course, and they're taking their biology course, and it's like 3 separate subjects where for me it makes a lot of sense how it all connects together. I'm sitting in a computer programming course and I'm saying, I could totally use that to do this in biology, really study how membrane potentials work, or membrane dynamics, or some kind of modeling of some kind of cell type thing. So I think that's where education is kind of trying to shift more, so that everyone can really open up and see those connections, not necessarily just the content of how to do the computer programming, but actually how that connects to the other stuff that you're studying. Well, I think the motivating factor behind a lot of this concept of interdisciplinary thought is that all of a sudden you're not just looking at one section and another section. All of it is coming together as one big topic. And understanding the topic from multiple viewpoints and multiple angles just makes it just that much more gratifying, because you understand it that much more thoroughly. The Ross curriculum is ideally set up for that, looking at just how the curriculum is set up, so that you're studying one subject, but you're studying it across the different arts. You're looking at it in humanities, you're looking at it in sciences, you're looking at it even in the art and media classes. You're looking at the same subject all from these different angles. That's what's kind of really fascinating about the curriculum.
Ross is a very interesting learning experience, and it's very unique. And it teaches you, instead of making this line from A to B, it encourages you to say, well, I'm going to go from A to F to Z to B. It allows you to think holistically about a problem rather than just looking at it dead on. You start to view the world in many different lenses in order to get a comprehensive understanding of a problem. And that's really the Ross School. It makes you a thinker. It makes you a creative-minded person, and it encourages you to ask questions.
A lot of ways that traditional research or academia has been done is in very narrow disciplines where people are focused on one research topic. But now I think research and universities and just scholarship in general is moving towards this model where instead of just being focused on your particular issue, you need to work across disciplines. So to think about education, for example, or environmental issues, they can't just be coming from the developmental psychologists. You have to work with people in economics, people in business, people in technology, and I think that's something that's very important to me and something I did get from Ross. We never had our isolated subjects. Everything was always integrated. So for me, it's just natural to not just think of something as a psychology issue, or not just think of something as an environmental issue or a history issue or a mathematical issue. You need to apply all of those ways of thinking and all of those concepts to address whatever problem, issue, social justice, dilemma, kind of that's at our hands. I think that's something that I do bring to my work and I value, but I also have to get training in specific domains so I can bring my piece to the puzzle.
I think Ross creates an environment so that people who, let's say, are naturally inclined to be interested in many different fields and want to learn about history and art and science and whatever, and craft, Ross gives them a foundation and an environment in which they can genuinely explore these different fields and study and try and fulfill these desires and understand these different ideas in totally different fields. And for the student who isn't inclined at first to study a wide variety of things, they are, I think, encouraged to see the benefits of doing so. If they are, let's say, just purely enjoying science and that is their field, that is their interest, that is what they want to pursue, that is always accepted, and you say, okay, great. But Ross definitely gives them a wider exposure to different things and how these different fields can actually affect their focus of science, or their focus of art, or their focus of math. And I think this is incredibly important today. And I don't think there are many places that really do this, or at least and even in higher education, the more educated you become, the more specialized people tend to become. The more professional you become in your field means the more specific and incredible you are at this one individual thing. And I think, at least at the very beginning of your education, having a broader concept of these different fields that exist in the world is incredibly important.
A lot of what I was allowed to do in high school and the latitude that was given to me made me the kind of learner that I am today, the independent and creative and kind of forward-thinking. And I also think by integrating the arts and the humanities into sort of the sciences, I started to approach the sciences from a more humanistic perspective in some ways. And so I think I had originally intended to study English in undergrad and ended up going a social science route, but still I consider myself kind of a humanities person at heart, and I think that has sort of imbued the practice of medicine for me with a whole new meaning and made me see my patients not completely from a scientific perspective, but kind of understand them from a narrative perspective and understand their narratives and interpret their narratives, and similar to literary analysis. Ross kind of was my foray into photography, and photography was I did a lot of photography in undergrad and spent many, many hours in the darkroom. And as I said, I did an elective in Cuba with the Ross School, as well as I actually got to go on a funded summer program to Italy and take a photographic workshop over the summer with Fordham University as a result of the Ross School. And I think photography has been one of the biggest factors in influencing me as well in terms of the way that I want to practice medicine, because I think that photography has kind of given me an approach to people and to helping me, allowing me to help their own narratives unfold for me in a way that I think there's a lot of similarities between photography and medicine. And when you photograph someone, you try and capture in that single moment the thing that is the essence of their narrative. And I think you do somewhat the same thing in medicine, where you try and understand someone's narrative. I think I sort of utilize integrated thinking every day in the work that I do now. I think that having had kind of a humanities perspective imbuing the scientific perspective has changed the way that I approach medicine and changed the way that I approach my patients. But I don't think the two need to be distinct from one another. I think that you can kind of have a humanities perspective and imbue the scientific perspective with a little bit more of humanities. And so I think I've always sort of prided myself in the idea of the art of medicine and thinking about the art of medicine. And I do think that's a very integrated thinking kind of approach, something that I learned when I was in high school about, you know, how to integrate the humanities and how to integrate the arts into kind of everything that we do, and to think not just about the science, but to think about the ways in which we can kind of move beyond the science and be better clinicians.